Hello and welcome to CVR English. This is Jyoti. Let's get into the world news updates. The number of legal cases against former US President Donald Trump could increase over the coming weeks. It comes as Carlos de Oliveira, a 56-year-old maintenance worker at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, appeared in court for his alleged involvement in withholding classified documents from federal authorities.
Carlos de Oliveira worked his way up from maintenance worker at the Mar-a-Lago estate to property manager. Now, de Oliveira is accused of conspiring with his boss, former President Donald Trump, to hide hundreds of classified federal documents and of lying about it to investigators. De Oliveira is the latest person charged in the documents case, one in which Trump is already facing 37 charges.
The Justice Department has unfortunately decided to bring these charges against Mr. De Oliveira.
Keep on going.
Now it's time for them to put their money where their mouth is. I'm looking forward to seeing what discovery is.
De Oliveira returns to court on August 10th.
Hello, Iowa.
This latest development comes as Trump, already under indictment in 2 cases, waits to learn whether he'll be charged in 2 more. One in Washington, D.C., where prosecutors are investigating his attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, including instigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. And the other in Georgia, where Trump has been accused of pressuring state officials to throw the results of the 2020 election his way. The prosecutor there says her investigation is nearly done.
Well, I've made a commitment to the American people, but most importantly, the citizens of Fulton County, that we were going to be making some big decisions regarding the election investigation, and that I would do that before September the 1st of 2023, and I'm going to hold true to that commitment.
At a campaign rally on Saturday, Trump whipped up the crowd with his long-running complaint about his legal situation.
These are ridiculous indictments. And all they're doing is hoping for massive election interference. That's all they want to do. They want to damage the leading candidate, by the way, leading by far, I have to say.
But so far, the legal cases haven't damaged Trump. A new poll puts him far ahead of his Republican rivals in the 2024 race. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera. Carlos de Oliveira worked his way up from maintenance worker at the Mar-a-Lago.
The overthrow of President Mohamed Bazoum has sent shockwaves across West Africa, pitting Niger's former Western allies against the likes of Russia and other junta leaders in the region. The junta that seized power in Niger last week detained senior politicians on Monday. The party said defying international calls to restore democratic rule, while fellow military rulers in West Africa expressed their support. The overthrow of President Mohamed Bazoum has sent shockwaves across West Africa, pitting Niger's former Western allies against the likes of Russia and other junta leaders in the region.
More senior politicians in Niger were arrested on Monday as the leaders of a military coup defied international calls to restore democratic rule and reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. A photo posted by Chad's President Mohamed Idriss Deby, seen on the left, who visited to try to mediate between the coup leaders and the ousted government, appeared to be the first image of Bazoum since the takeover, showing him smiling and apparently unharmed. The coup has sent shockwaves across West Africa, pitting Niger's former Western allies against the likes of Russia and other Hutu leaders in the region.
There's a lot of speculation at this point.
Annalise Bernard, the Director of Strategic Stabilization Advisors, formerly with the State Department in Niger, says there are several theories and rumors for why the coup is happening now, but that military coups are not new to the region.
There's a lot of people talking about how this is Nigerians trying to throw off the yoke of their former colonial ties to France and trying to kick out other Westerners. There's also talk that Russia is behind this. We do not have any evidence that that's the case. What we are seeing, obviously, is that the civilian population, specifically in Niamey, the capital, is very loud right now about anti-French and anti-Western sentiment. There's obviously, we've seen the Russian flags circulating in some of the protests in the streets. But this is also something that we've seen civil society do anytime that there's a protest that takes place in the city, of which there are regular protests in Niamey.
The United States, former colonial power France, and other Western countries have troops in Niger and had been working with the government to fight militant forces linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, and the coup has raised fears for the security of the region.
Niger was our last bulwark of stability in the region, and the country that not just the United States, but a lot of Western partners had invested a lot into. And if Russia does get involved in this one, it undermines, let alone fully dislodges, Western efforts and certainly alliances across the entire Sahel belt. And that is really significant. It was very hard, obviously, when that came true in Mali and seems to be coming true in Burkina Faso as well. But Niger seems like the last, bulwark of stability before we lost all contact with that entire region. And there's a sense, obviously, within Washington that, if Russia is present, it's a very binary relationship. There cannot be a presence of the United States there when Russia's there. I think that relationship becomes quite binary. So I think that's also kind of the big concern, and certainly.
The juntas of neighboring Burkina Faso and Mali voiced their support for the coup on Monday and warned that any military intervention in Niger will be considered a declaration of war against their countries too. Meanwhile, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, has welcomed the coup in Niger and said his forces were available to restore order. The Kremlin, for its part, said on Monday that the situation in Niger was, quote, cause for serious concern, and called for a swift return to constitutional order. A United States official on Monday said the coup had not been fully successful and that there was still an opportunity to reinstate Bazoum. France and Germany echoed those comments.
A drone hit a commercial building in Moscow. This drone struck over the weekend while at least one other drone was downed, while other hostile drones have reached the heart of the Russian capital. Down by air defense systems while trying to fly to the capital. He added one of the drones flew into the same tower in Moscow city as last time. Russian state news agency TASS reported Moscow's Vnukovo International Airport was briefly closed. The airport was temporarily shut for arrivals and departures, and the planes were redirected. Normal operations resumed later. The Russian Defense Ministry blamed the drone attacks on Kyiv. It said 2 drones were destroyed by air defense systems in Odentsovo and Naro-Fominsk districts near Moscow, while a third was jammed and crashed in capital. Ukraine does not acknowledge cross-border drone attacks in keeping with its security policy. The recent strikes reflect a pattern of more frequent and deeper cross-border strikes the Kyiv government has launched since starting a counteroffensive in June. Amid rapidly evolving global security dynamics, a new era of drone warfare has already arrived. Unmanned aerial vehicles, remote and pre-programmed, have been used extensively in battles. Drones gather intelligence, deliver explosives, and can even launch missiles and fly away. In the 2020 Armenia-Azerbaijan war, Azerbaijan relied heavily on drones and loitering munitions. They allowed Azerbaijan to shrink the battlefield and chip away at Armenia's armored forces and the logistical tail. The use of unmanned aerial vehicles has moved from counter-terrorism to counter-insurgency warfare into full-scale conventional combat. Ukrainian firefighters worked to douse the blaze at a warehouse in Kharkiv hit by a Russian missile strike, as seen in images released by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Myanmar's former leader Aung San Suu Kyi will be pardoned for 5 of the numerous offences for which she was jailed for a total of 33 years. The Nobel laureate, who last week moved from prison to house arrest in the capital, Neftia, has been in detention since the military seized power in a coup in early 2021. She is appealing the convictions for various offences ranging from incitement and election fraud to corruption. She denied all of the charges. Myanmar radio and television reported the pardons on Tuesday, but an informed source said she would remain in detention.
In a junta amnesty of more than 7,000 prisoners in order to mark Buddhist Lent. Last week, it was reported that Suu Kyi was moved from prison to house arrest as a part of an act of clemency. This was seen as a positive sign from the authorities. 78-year-old Suu Kyi is serving a 33-year sentence on multiple charges. She was detained after military coup in February 2021, after which more than 3,800 people have been killed in the country so far. The reports of her being pardoned comes just a day after Myanmar's junta announced the extension of state emergency in the country by 6 months. The move will cause a delay in elections, which the junta had earlier promised to hold by August this year. In a junta amnesty of more than 7,000 prisoners in order to mark Buddhist.
At least 11 people have been killed and 40 wounded in the clashes that broke out in Ain el-Hilwa camp near the southern coastal city of Sladen over the weekend. Security and Palestinian sources said hundreds of residents of a main Palestinian camp in Lebanon fled on Monday as fighting between mainstream faction Fatah and radical Islamists raged for a third day. Residents and security sources said the fighting wrecked a ceasefire agreed on Sunday between rival Palestinian groups that included representatives of the pro-Iranian Hezbollah group and its ally, the Amal movement that holds sway in southern Lebanon. At least 11 people have been killed and 40 wounded in the clashes that broke out in Ain el-Hilwa camp near the southern coastal city of Sidon over the weekend, security and Palestinian sources said.
Weekend between members of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement and an Islamist militant group, both based in the Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp. Of the 11 killed in these clashes is a staff member from the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. The voluntary organization, which provides humanitarian assistance to at least 50,000 refugees, has temporarily suspended relief operations as violence continued. This in spite of a truce on Sunday, which both parties failed to honor. Several shops had earlier closed down in the area and people fled the camp as violence escalated between the rival groups. The Lebanese army said a mortar fell inside a military base, wounding one soldier in the process. The camp has regularly seen factional disputes spiral into deadly violence over the years, but the Lebanese army does not enter Palestinian refugee camps in the country, and the groups living in these refugee camps outside the main city lines handle their own security. Close to 400,000 refugees are reportedly living in 12 Palestinian camps across Lebanon. These settlements were set up in 1948 for Palestinians who were driven out or fled during the war that coincided with Israel's creation. In recent years, they were joined by thousands of Palestinians who were fleeing the war in Syria. Weekend between members of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
At least 11 people are dead and 13 are missing after heavy rains lashed Beijing state media said Tuesday in downpours that have submerged roads and deluged neighborhoods with mud. Typhoon coming packing, maximum sustained wind speeds of 162 kilometers an hour as it crosses the Pacific Ocean is expected to start battering Japan's Okinawa region late Tuesday. Naha's port was pummeled by rain and strong winds. Some 5,000 people take to the streets of Sofia, the Bulgarian capital, to protest violence against women after a harrowing incident in which a teenager was attacked with a knife. Shocked the Balkan nation, the 18-year-old was attacked a month ago, claiming her ex-boyfriend cut her hundreds of times, broke her nose and shaved off her hair. A court in the city of Stara Zagora categorized the injuries as light and did not order the 26-year-old offender to detained. Facing pressure, authorities have since rolled back on this decision and detained the man over threatening text messages. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi receives Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in the coastal city of El Alamein a day after Abbas and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh met and decided to form a committee on intra-Palestinian reconciliation. The capital city of Bangladesh continues to be roiled with demonstrations by the supporters of the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. The US has now expressed concerns over the instability and political violence in the country.
Since the United States State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has now urged Bangladesh to create a safe environment for people to peacefully assemble and for all parties to refrain from violence and harassment.
We are concerned about the reports of intimidation and political violence in Bangladesh surrounding this weekend's political protests. We encourage the government of Bangladesh to investigate reports of violence thoroughly, transparently, and impartially, and to hold the perpetrators of violence to account. We urge Bangladesh to create a safe environment for people to peacefully assemble and voice their concerns. And we call on all parties to respect fundamental freedoms and the rule of law and to refrain from violence, harassment, and intimidation. And I will say finally that free and fair elections depend on the commitment of everyone, voters, political parties, youth wings, and police, and cannot take place in an environment with political violence.
Now, apart from this, 14 U.S. lawmakers have written to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations about the demonstrations in the South Asian country. In the letter to the ambassador, Linda Thomas, the lawmakers urged the organization to take cognizance of the unrest. They also called for the deployment of UN peacekeeping forces during the next general election. The opposition party has been calling for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to step down ahead of the next election due in January 2024. The opposition also urged elections to be held under a neutral caretaker government, a demand that her government has rejected. According to reports, the Bangladesh security forces fired rubber bullets, tear gas at the protesters of the opposition party on Friday. And the critics argue that Prime Minister Hasina has maintained tight control over people in the country who are against her ever since coming to power in 2009. Her administration has been accused of cracking down on free speech and also suppressing dissent and her critics.
The former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia was jailed in 2018 on graft charges. Since then, the main opposition party has been holding protest rallies which have gained traction in the recent months.
At least 2 people have been killed in Senegal's capital, Dakar, the city witnessing clashes after the country's key opposition leader's arrest. 2 people have been killed in Senegal in protests sparked by the arrest of opposition figure Ousmane Sonko, according to the country's interior ministry.
That he saw its fiercest critic. He has faced a string of legal woes which he claims have been designed to keep him out of politics. His arrest is the latest move in a long-running tussle between the two leaders. In June this year, he was sentenced in absentia for 2 years in jail for immoral corruption, which makes him ineligible to run for president in next year's elections. He has denied any wrongdoing. His supporters say that President Sall has used these charges to sideline his popular opponent ahead of upcoming elections in February. New charges under which Sonko has been arrested include undermining state security, criminal association with a terrorist body, circulating false news and theft. Less than 2 hours after Sonko's indictment, country's interior minister announced that his party would be dissolved for having frequently called for insurrection, leading to destruction and the loss of life. The party has slammed the move and has said that the country's stability is now compromised. Sonko supporters are now protesting, demanding his release. Demonstrators burned tires, set up roadblock in the capital as they clashed with the police.
Fans, friends and family of the late Hong Kong-born American singer and songwriter Coco Lee gathered for her funeral, paying respects to the star who died at the age of 48 after a career spanning 3 decades.
5 seconds silence to memory the love of Coco.
My sister would often say this in her concert. You would have chosen to go anywhere, but today you chose to come here. Be with me. For that, I thank all of you. Thank you.
I'll keep on dancing, singing for you, and shine for you. You're my everything. I love you.
我觉得我们想要告诉他的是，你给我们的温暖，你的歌声会一直存在我们心里面，大家都是。那你带给我们的善良跟乐观，我们会传递给每一个人。对。
Paul Rubens, the actor who played Pee Wee Herman, a nerdy character who wore a grey suit and red bow tie, known for his distinctive laugh, has died. these are the world updates. Thank you for watching CVR News English with me, Jyoti.